Hey, agency owners and digital marketing enthusiasts. Welcome to another episode of the $5 million Milestone Podcast, where Tim Kelsey and I pull back the curtain on what it really takes to build and scale a digital marketing agency. Today, we're joined by Katie Holler, the VP of Marketing at Clutch, and we're diving deep into the power of social proof. We'll unpack how genuine customer stories and experiences aren't just testimonials, they're your most powerful marketing weapon. Hi, Katie. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Pierre and Tim. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have a chance to chat with you today.
Likewise.
Right. Yeah, Katie, let's just jump right in. And to kick things off, can you walk us through your journey into the digital marketing and agency world and how you got to work with Clutch, one of the top leading review sites for B2B service providers?
Yeah, so I actually started my career at a digital marketing agency right when I graduated from college. That was my first job. And we were billing ourselves as a word of mouth agency, but it was right around the time when businesses were starting to take interest in how to reach consumers through social media. It was before most social platforms had even advertising capabilities or really the ability to monetize. There was a lot of community management and thinking about how brands can kind of extend their PR strategies and their word of mouth online. And so within a year of joining that agency, it actually went out of business. So this is kind of like my first professional experience. I got to live kind of what a lot of agency owners I've come to learn have experienced is had a really great idea, had a really great kind of right on the precipice of what was going to be a huge focus for a lot of agencies over the coming years. Unfortunately, it was right when the recession hit. And so a lot of our clients at the time were, looking at it as kind of an experimental channel for them. It was new. And so all of the retainers kind of got pulled back and we had to make the hard decision, to shut down that business. But I think that was really formative in my career and where I went from there because I was really inspired by getting to work with the variety of businesses that an agency is able to interact with. And it just creates kind of that spice of life where you have lots of different challenges that you're solving day in and day out. And so over the last 15 years, I've really focused in on these two-sided marketplace type businesses like Clutch, the bulk of which was at Capterra, which was later acquired by Gartner, so in the software space, and had the opportunity 2.5 years ago to join the team at Clutch. And they had really never had a marketing function or a head of marketing. And so given my background in leading marketing functions for these kind of places where you're bringing buyers and sellers together to interact, it was a great fit and has been really exciting to work with the team, build up the marketing function internally and help accelerate both the users coming to the site to find agencies to work with, as well as the service providers that we work with on that side of the business.
It's interesting that your very first job was with a marketing agency. Did you study marketing at college? Was that your major, or you just sort of ended up in that path?
Yeah, no, I did. I went to the University of Virginia. I actually live in Charlottesville now, so I'm back in the same city where I went to college and focused in business undergrad, and always just had this interest in marketing because I thought it really brought together the kind of artistic side, the creative side, as well as the more analytical, data-driven interests that I've always had, and so studied that. And had this really interest in marketing throughout. And so had the opportunity to work on a advertising promotion class in college where we were pitching, actually it was AOL was the client. So we were pitching campaigns around instant messenger. And so got connected to the agency I ended up working with through that class. And that was my path into the agency world.
Awesome. That sounds fun. When I've talked to people in the agency world, it's either, there was this direct focus business and marketing, or there's some weird roundabout story where they kind of accidentally ended up in marketing. I'm one of the weird roundabout stories. I was a music major in college and just ended up doing marketing later and realized I enjoyed it. So interesting that that's sort of been your trajectory the whole time. I'm wondering if you can give us maybe a bit of a history lesson about Clutch and sort of what was the catalyst that drove the business to be founded. I think you think back 5 or 10 years or even more about online reviews, it's things like Yelp that come to mind, or Google as they started to release Google My Business and all the iterations that have been of that over the past decade or more. What was it that the Clutch founders saw as an opportunity, and like where did they see their niche building into that when it kind of seemed like there were some dominant players in the field already?
Sure. Yeah, as you mentioned, there are definitely a long history of review sites out there. And I think what really drove our founder in developing Clutch was B2B buying in particular is just a different beast. It's a really long and arduous process. There's a lot of fragmentation in the market and trying to figure out, is this going to be the right fit for me? And it's a pretty high stakes purchase. So as you mentioned, on the one end, you have sites like Yelp and Google that I think are really built for more local consumer businesses. You might use them to find a restaurant or a home services provider, right? And that's going to be a kind of specific experience for a very short period of time for a very distinct need. Whereas B2B purchases with digital agencies are really much more complex purchases. You're either getting into, I think on average, our project sizes that we see on Clutch are north of $80,000 for a commitment. So it's either going to be a really high ticket project that you're looking for, or a many month relationship and sometimes many years relationship with this partner. And so I think the sites that are built for those types of kind of consumer services just don't get to the specific questions that you need to feel confident to make a decision of this nature in B2B. I think on the other end of the spectrum, there were the analyst firms that are out there kind of putting out reports of what big enterprises are focused on and consulting firms that they're working with, but that's really in this bigger enterprise space. And so most businesses are not of that size or don't have those types of budgets. And so there was this real gap in between those two of how can we bring transparency to B2B buying and particularly services. And I think in the foundation of the business was the quality of the content that we are publishing and the reviews. Our reviews on Clutch are over 500 words long on average, and they go very in depth and are specific to every single type of service that someone might be looking for, because the context of that client's business, their objectives, the deliverables, kind of the outcome of the project is what you really need to get insight into to feel like, okay, I feel confident that they're going to be able to deliver for my project and my business needs. And so we've built the site over the years to really cater to uniquely to that specific B2B services focus.
Yeah, that's great. When I think about comparing some of our Google reviews versus our Clutch reviews, the Google reviews are 2 to 3 sentences at best. And a Clutch review has information about sort of the price range of the project that we did for them, lots of information. There's a nice little quote. There's so much more detail there. And in our profile as well, there's this information about our skill set and all this kind of stuff that I think is so useful in a prospect, helping them make a decision. I often tell other agency owners that I talk to when they're thinking about where do I generate more leads, that in our experience, the leads we get from Clutch are much warmer and much higher quality than something we would get through, say, like organic traffic or a Google Ads click or something like that. Because someone who's going to Clutch and searching already has an idea. They know they need an agency. They have an idea of what they want, as opposed to someone who searched for website development and, oh, you're there, I'm going to click on you, but you don't know they don't maybe don't even know their budget yet, and they don't know anything about you, and then you maybe sometimes waste your time on a lead that was going nowhere. So I've always appreciated that aspect of Clutch, all the detail that's provided there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of hit on the buyer intent piece of just the nature of somebody who's going to click to a review site and kind of do that deeper research and thoughtful consideration before engaging with them does speak to, it's just a different type of lead that's going to be a little bit more informed and warmer and closer to really being ready to work with somebody more immediately.
Katie, I'm curious to know if you were, when Clutch was started, if you were already thinking about certain types of businesses that rely heavily on RFPs, requests for proposals, or requests for quotes. Was that sort of built in mind, or is that something that you guys kind of figured out later on, that Clutch was really attracting a lot of those type of businesses? And I think sometimes nonprofits or manufacturing kind of type of businesses as well come to mind.
Yeah, we actually really focused early on, and this was before my time there, in the technology and IT services
Mm-hmm.
space, and that was really the foundation. And I think you know working with companies to kind of take those procurement processes that they might already have an RFP and kind of digitize that. And what we found actually was a lot of businesses don't have a formal RFP process, and a site like Clutch can help kind of standardize like how you go about doing procurement and making sure you're evaluating different providers and getting multiple quotes and comparing, kind of creating a more level playing field. So there's that apples to apples. So we focused a lot in the IT space, found kind of a foothold in particularly in development services. So a lot of web development, app development, and that was really kind of Clutch's first area of growth. This was about a decade ago. And then marketing was kind of the second wave of tons of marketing services out there. As a marketing leader myself, constantly looking for different specialized agencies that are going to help with specific, go to market motions or channels that we're focused on or specific needs that we have. And so that was kind of the next wave of focus was, how can we create more awareness for all of the myriad marketing agencies across the globe.
Changing gears a little bit, I'd like to talk about AI and how that's maybe impacted the review space. I mean, in some ways, I could see it being a positive thing, making it a lot easier for businesses to go out there and maybe have pre-written reviews for or testimonials for their customers to agree to. But I also wonder if people reading reviews and testimonials are now potentially becoming more suspicious that it's not from a real human. What's your take on AI's impact in reviews in general, and maybe for Clutch specifically? Are you doing anything that has to combat that or to make it easier? Yeah, just sort of overall, where does AI fit into all of this?
Yeah, great question. I think it's on the tops of minds of everyone these days in every business, but certainly the prevalence of AI has heightened the quality bar for any sites that publish online reviews or really publish content on the web, I would say. And I think, fortunately, it's an area where Clutch has always been really rigorous in qualifying and validating the stories of the reviewers who are submitting these testimonials and oftentimes critical feedback of providers they've worked with. And so, over the years, a big part of our review process has been actually offering and following up with reviewers over the phone to ask follow-up questions and further validate their specific experience. But I think more broadly, with so much AI generated content out there today, I think there's like a human desire just to have more real stories and actual experiences in the content they're consuming. You're seeing kind of a regeneration of sites like Reddit and communities that are popping up more often, because I think with so much just kind of informational content out there, people want to hear from other humans. And so I think that's been our focus internally, is how can we continue to elevate and show that these are actual, validated businesses that have real experiences with these providers, and kind of humanize the stories behind that. Now, certainly, we're not shying away from the use of AI. And so I think where we're thinking about it is, can we leverage AI to better personalize? We talked about, over the years, a big part of our process was calling these reviewers and talking to them on the phone. Well, a lot of people don't want to get on the phone and have that long conversation. Can we mimic that dynamic conversation you might get, like we're having here, through a online experience, right? Can we ask different follow-up questions based on what they just answered the previous question? And so we're using AI in that capacity to think about how we can continue to pull out the most insightful elements of a client's project and their experience with an agency. We're also leveraging AI to just make those insights easier to find because we have hundreds of thousands of reviews and individual providers may have tens or hundreds of reviews. And so that's a lot of content to kind of read through, some of which may be really relevant, some may not. And so we're using AI to summarize and draw out some of those key insights for providers across the site, and also use that data and all of those stories to better match prospective clients to the right provider. So when somebody is going through our site, we have a tool called a project brief tool where they can submit kind of what their project looks like, and it will actually source from providers' reviews across the site to say, oh, based on what you're describing, these providers have this specific experience in your industry or for this type of deliverable, to make those matches easier for folks. So we're definitely using it internally, but it's not replacing the reviews. I think instead we want to make sure that human element stays, at the forefront of everything we're publishing.
Yeah, I think that building trust is such a big part of what you're doing. I mean, these reviews are essentially a trust factor for an agency or a business to present themselves. And so the more you can represent that there's a real human behind it, the better. It makes me think about, there's a great tip that if you're searching for something on Google, just add Reddit to the end. So you get an answer from a real person on a Reddit thread who has real experience, not some 10,000 word blog article that was written and had link building just so it could show up in the first result on Google. It's that same, I think in the world of AI, when there's the potential for so much easily generated content, having that sort of human influence is the thing that's really going to stand out, help you stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely. And I think by contrast, love Reddit and community threads and having those sorts of interactions. I think what you miss from a B2B context in those types of platforms is, well, what was their business? Are they in my industry? What's their company size? What's their job function? Somebody's experience with a provider might be really different than what you're looking to get out of your agency relationship. And so I think that's where a site like Clutch can help provide that helpful context of, okay, let me caveat this review with the lens of what my business needs and what my particular challenges are that I'm looking to solve.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned earlier was how Clutch is leveraging AI to do those summaries of all those reviews. And, like you said, when you get to 50 or 100 of reviews, it becomes really time consuming for users. And so we've found those really helpful, I think, also actually as an agency, just to kind of get a quick summary of all the reviews we've gotten, and kind of seeing, okay, is what we think are competitive advantages, is that what customers actually value the most, and does this match up? So it's actually not just useful for the buyers, but it's useful as well for the vendors who to get sort of that summary. I think we've also even seen that Clutch can be a good sort of competitor research tool, kind of check out, okay, what are customers, what are competitors, what are they, what kind of reviews are they getting, what are they doing well, what are they not doing well, or what are certain types of customers saying for certain very specific services as well. And so if you're trying to enter a different industry, for example, that can be actually a useful resource. So just some of the ways to get a bit creative with the Clutch data. And kind of sort of, now that I'm talking about this Clutch data, I think I'm kind of curious if you've been able to kind of notice any changes in clients' behavior over the lifetime that Clutch has been around, and how people are selecting to hire agencies, and as well, is it impacting the types of lead agencies are receiving through Clutch?
I think that throughout Clutch's history, you see a similar buyer behavior. And we've actually done a lot of research on better understanding kind of what triggers different services purchases and what gets people into our site, but also just into the mindset of, hey, I think I need to engage a service provider, an agency for this project. And what we found is typically that search does start pretty broad. They come in on kind of this main, I need a digital marketing agency, or I need a web developer, right? And that there's probably some acute pain, there's some specific problem that they need to go out and find somebody fast because they need to deliver for their business and they need to kind of change the trajectory or accelerate their growth. And so that there's generally this kind of broader intent that they get to kind of this broad category of, I think I need a digital marketing agency. Well, as you know, digital marketing agency could have any number of specialties or focuses. And what we do a lot in our user testing on the site and allowing people to kind of filter and in the summaries that you talked about that we present on the profiles of individual providers, you'll notice across, our entire site, we have a big focus on what is the distribution of this firm's specialties. And we found the most successful firms are really specific in niche down and who they serve and what they are best at and what they can uniquely deliver. And I think buyers increasingly respond to that, right? So we've seen over the years that buyers are getting more savvy around, hey, I don't just want a digital marketing agency. I am a B2B SaaS business, and I want someone who has experience working in the B2B SaaS industry. And so I'm going to maybe still not search for that. So you're not going to get that level of kind of personalization in a Google search. But when they get to a site like Clutch, seeing that, oh, their industry experience is focused more here, let me narrow in on firms that focus more on my industry. Let me focus it more in on a particular technology that I need them to be proficient with so they can work within our tech stack or within the channels that we're focused on. And so we've seen a lot more, I think, people coming in and wanting to get more narrow in terms of the type of provider that they're looking for. And you do see it also in people's searches over time. I think increasingly as people go through, a lot of folks have had, failed agency relationships, unfortunately. And I think a lot of that comes from, not fully scoping out what they were really looking for and what they wanted that deliverable to look like. And so I think you're seeing increased searches for people looking for specialties within those formats that I talked about, like by industry, by technology specialization, by kind of their unique capabilities to deliver for the project they're looking for.
That's really interesting because in some ways, it almost feels counterintuitive to the agency. I mean, I know there's always lots of talk about finding your niche and specializing in that. But often when I think about digital marketing, it's sort of like, how do we appeal to the broader group? Like when we are building our SEO strategy, we're thinking about how do we get our web development page to rank and our hosting and maintenance page and our SEO page and our Google Ads page, all these services that we provide. And that's sort of our SEO play, is get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, and then the right ones come in. But with Clutch, sounds like it's almost the opposite, is find the place that you want to specialize in and make it clear on your profile that this is what we're best at. And this is where we serve the market best, and like attracting that very specific group of your ideal client profile to come in. And that's going to look a lot better to them when they see, okay, this person gets me, they know what I do, they know my industry and the tools that I want and all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's still a smart SEO strategy of what you're describing, because as I said, we've found for our site and just on Google and search engines that people do still start with that broad, I just need web development, I just need SEO, right? Like I just need this broad category of service, and they're not necessarily doing all of that modifying of who they're looking for in their search. But when you show up in those results for that broad term with a very specific solution and point of view of how you're going to serve a unique segment of the market, I think you really stand out, especially on a site like ours where there may be, hundreds or thousands of providers listed. You're going to better kind of cut through the list if you have a really specific audience and what you serve.
Great. One last thing I'd like to circle back on, you just touched on this briefly earlier, is critical or negative reviews. And I mean, everybody's gotten them. It happens. Someone's just not a fit for your business and they're not happy, and they leave a bad review for you on any one of the review portals or directories. Do you have advice for agency owners on how to respond to that and what they should do in that situation when they've received some critical feedback?
Yes, it's a great question. And I think we hear this all the time from clients of, oh my gosh, the world's ending. Like I just got my first negative review and this is going to totally tank my reputation. And I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to say like, make it go away. And of course, we want to be objective. We want to show both sides of the story. And so we actually have found that buyers understand that, right? These are smart, sophisticated people who have worked with different professional services themselves over the years. And so they have more trust when they see there are different experiences that people have had. If you just have all 5-star reviews and nobody has anything constructive to say, I think that can actually cause some doubt in a prospective client. So having a negative review is not inherently going to hurt your performance. I think the best thing we encourage vendors to do is reply with acknowledging the situation. What was your side of the story? And that's not necessarily to argue with the person who left the review, but it's your opportunity to show other people seeing that what the context might have been. And, it's your opportunity to kind of show that you can take feedback, right? I think that's a big piece of it is how are you going to respond to that? Do you acknowledge it or do you correct anything that maybe was misstated? But I think that's the best advice I can give is it's actually a real opportunity for you to show your commitment to client service and how you're going to respond to a challenge if you're working with a future client who has an issue is that you're willing to take feedback and respond to it and acknowledge it. And I think that can really earn a lot more trust than, like I said, having just all glowing reviews.
Yeah, when I'm looking around at buying something or staying at a hotel or going to a restaurant, I'd much rather trust the place that has a bunch of reviews and a 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 score than the place that has 5 reviews and they're all 5 stars. I think we've all kind of learned that you can manipulate things a little bit. You can just ask your best friends to come leave you reviews for your restaurant or your store or whatever. So when people see those authentic experiences, I think everybody knows as a consumer that no business out there is perfect or a perfect match for everybody who walks in the door. So yeah, I think that's a great perspective to use that as an opportunity to show who you are really as a business. I think how you react to that challenge and that adversary is really telling about who you are as a business and what you'll act like when things get tough for that customer. So yeah, I think that's really great advice for agency owners out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit it on the nail on the head with the context, right? Like I love the travel example of I took my kids on a spring break trip earlier this year and we were looking for a hotel that was going to be kid friendly. Now, if a couple who went there on their honeymoon had a bad experience because there was lots of kids playing in the pool, that's not necessarily going to dampen my likelihood to book that hotel, right? I want a place that's going to be okay with my kids running around the pool. So I think it's all about that context, right? And I think people are smart in understanding that, okay, the situation for that business didn't work out, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be a good fit for my business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to get when you're dealing with reviews, it's also about how recent are those reviews and making sure you continue getting more reviews. Because I think one of the best sort of solutions we've found as well when you get a negative review is, okay, let's try to get 4 really good reviews, and then you kind of push that one down, and you kind of, okay, well, if it was like one person that was unhappy out of the last 5, then you've kind of changed the equation as well. It's a kind of continuing to do that is important, and kind of having that practice. And I'm also curious to hear a little bit from you of sort of what would you say is the state of reviews in the agency world from what you can see in Clutch. What's a good number of reviews for an agency to have?
I think you touch on something really I should have added is that it's that recency and frequency of the feedback. And I think as you're getting, whether it's positive or negative, I think people want to hear what you're up to now. Right. And so I don't know that there's a solid number that it's kind of like once you've got this many, you're good to go. We encourage at least get to, I think 10 is a good milestone to kind of show that you have a diversity of clients you've worked with and kind of a established reputation. But beyond 10, I think a big piece of it is, are you showing recency? Are you showing that diversity of the types of projects that you've worked on, the different clients you've worked on? So I think it's more important that rather than just optimizing toward a number, and we actually in Clutch's algorithms and how companies are ranked will prioritize recency, frequency, and the closer it is to the service line that buyer came in off of. So if they're looking for web development, we're going to focus and showcase more of your web development reviews versus if they came in versus, on SEO, for example, as a service they're looking for, then we're going to highlight more of the SEO experience. And so it's important, I think, for agencies to think about how are they telling kind of the stories of the clients they've worked with across those different services they provide or different verticals that they serve, and making sure that they're consistently kind of getting fresh client engagement over time.
Yeah, I really like that what you said about sort of making sure you're not just focused on one big number. And that sort of reminds me of the concept of the gap and the gain. And, if you're always looking at the gap, then, it's kind of a little depressing. And how am I going to get to 100 reviews? But if you're looking, oh, wow, we gained another 2 or 3 reviews in the last month or in the last, however month, you're already starting to have a more positive mindset. And I think that's a good way to kind of get going. And building that sort of social proof and getting more reviews.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the how, we've really seen success with agencies when they build this into their processes and systems. So if you have account reps, who are closing a project, making it a practice to ask for that review as they're, wrapping an engagement, or if it's an ongoing kind of retainer relationship, when if you're getting kind of regular input with the business and they feel happy with the performance of the agency, or if you're doing like an NPS and getting feedback on a regular basis, routing those, promoters and people who've had good experiences with you to your Clutch page to leave a review. I think the more kind of ingrained it is to ask for the review is where we see, that become a lot easier for agencies to collect that frequency.
Yeah, we run an NPS survey, and that's definitely one of the big sort of sources for collecting Clutch reviews. And then, like you said as well, like working with account managers and sort of try to incorporate sort of that review process as well within sort of the bigger process of building case studies, which you also have to do in order to kind of win more clients anyway. Try to figure out how do you get your Clutch review first, and then you kind of build on that for your case study. Can be really useful as well, and that's sort of that whole process. And actually, I think that's one of the things that Clutch is also working on, and helping agencies build out more case studies.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, encourage agencies to we have a function where you can download your full review. And as I mentioned, these are really long and nuanced experiences. And so it can actually kind of help format it into a case study for you.
Nice. All right. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for a really great conversation about social proof and effective marketing. So thanks for sharing your experience with us today. And Katie, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Best channel to connect with me is through LinkedIn. It's Katie Holler, and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Katie. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you.
All right.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
And we'll be adding links to your LinkedIn profile and Clutch in our show notes. So, all right. Thanks everyone for listening. If you got value from this episode, do us a huge favor and yourself. First, take one of the strategies we discussed today and implement it this week. Then share your results with us on LinkedIn. Tag the $5 Million Milestone podcast and let us know how social proof is transforming your marketing. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and hey, become part of our own social proof. Your stories and feedback are what keep this podcast moving forward. So until next time, keep pushing those boundaries and building the agency of your dreams. This is Piramal alongside Tim Kelsey, signing off from the $5 million milestone podcast.